Hello, everyone. So, this is quite a, I would say, really difficult video for me to make. Usually, I make like controversial topics, or I comment on things going on in the reborn world, not so much my own collection as much, and my journey into reborns and all of that. I rarely kind of talk about that or go into detail. But for you guys who don't know, who haven't, this is my first time you're ever seeing me, my first video you're ever hearing from me. I first started collecting realistic dolls back in 2012. I was 13 at the time, and I forgot my first doll. And it wasn't actually a reborn, it was a realistic doll. It was a Cherish doll by Ashton Drake. So, still factory made, but way, way more realistic than, the dolls you would get at Walmart. Way more expensive than the dolls you would get at Walmart. But that doll was my first introduction into this world of these wonderful dolls. Now, back then when I had that doll had a name. I would like role play with him. I filmed a few videos a long time ago with that doll. You'll never see those videos or find those. Um, I hope not, but they were a little bit embarrassing but I was 13, you know. But yes, I used to be far more of what I would say a normal, kind of like what you think of when you think of a reborn collector. I used to be a lot more like that, hands-on with my dolls, I guess you would say. Um, but so I had that doll for a very long time. For a lot of people, I had that doll, I think, all the way until 2019. Um, but that being said, I didn't like actively engage with that doll for more than a couple of years because then I went to college in 2017. So I went to college, away to college in 2017. So that particular doll kind of stayed at my mom's house in a closet somewhere um, for a very long time. And then finally, I don't know I think really what prompted me to get back into reborn collecting was I decided I wanted to be a reborn artist. And so back in I believe it was 2019, I'm like almost 100% sure. In 2019 is when I first decided, okay, it's been a while. It's been a very long time since I've even, thought about these dolls. Um, I'm now, well into my college years at this point. I decided, okay, I want to try to see if I can be an artist and paint these dolls because one of the main issues I was having was finding affordable dolls of color. So there's so many cheap white reborn dolls, but there was almost zero that were affordable for me at the time when I was a young college student. So I was about 20 at the time. I decided, you know what? I think I can do this. I have an artistic background. I went to a school of the arts for high school, and so I decided that I probably could do this myself and make my own dolls. And so I started making these dolls um, out of my dorm room. Yes, out of my dorm room. I had a oven and everything in my dorm room. But I will say, I think the first time I ever painted a doll was on summer break, that summer break. So I did start painting them at a house, and then I moved to painting them out of my dorm room. As I realized I could actually do this, I could actually make some money from this. And so, the reborn dolls made it possible for me to have income even as a college student because I wasn't working a full-time job and going to college. I was doing work study. So for those who don't know what work study is, the federal government, as part of your financial aid for that year, you are allowed to work usually it's on-campus job and make up that additional cost towards your college tuition. And so work study is very, very limited. You can only work a certain amount of hours. and you can only, make so much money off of your work study job. So I wasn't making a bunch of money, but I still was having to work. So I was working, doing college, and then I started making the dolls. And making the dolls is really where I started to actually generate some savings for myself. So these reborn dolls have been such a very, very important part of my um, adulthood, going into becoming an independent adult. It has been a very big part of my life, even back when I was 13. So I've known about these dolls and I've been a part of this doll world for a very long time. And that's what makes today in this video very difficult for me. So, like I said, I used to be one of those regular collectors who would spend a lot of time, you know, looking at their dolls, picking up their dolls, holding their dolls. When I very, very was much, much younger, that is how I was. I was very hands-on with my dolls. And then when I started getting back into the reborn world in 2019, I didn't really feel the same way necessarily about the dolls. I didn't really want to role play with them. I had no interest in really taking them out. I mean, I took them out a few times just to make videos. But I'm not that type of person who wants that kind of attention. And when you bring out a reborn doll, as many of you guys know who have brought out dolls, most of the times it's very clear that it's a doll. And of course, people have questions or they look at you strange. And I don't care so much about people looking at me like I'm strange. When I'm out and about, I don't necessarily want to be stopped for a bunch of questions all the time. About the dolls and why and go into the whole explanation about the dolls every single time I go out with one. So for me, I'm not interacting with these dolls that much. I've been mostly just collecting them because I love the art form and I love looking at them. And occasionally I'll dress them in cute things, but that's really the extent of what I do with my collection is I look at them, put them in a corner of a room and dress them every now and then and take pictures. So I'm saying all this to say that I finally have come to the decision, and maybe this won't be forever, but I have come to the conclusion that I really am not a reborn collector anymore. And because I've been a part of these dolls for so long, this is hard for me because being a collector is such a big part of being in the reborn community that it's been hard to kind of admit to myself that I really don't care about collecting them anymore. Like, I thought that, selling my old dolls that I most recently had and getting a whole new collection, starting basically new, would help me, like, I don't know, reconnect with the collector side of these dolls. Because I was like, well, maybe I just need to look at some new faces and have some new dolls in my collection to find that part again. But honestly, all these dolls that you're seeing in this video right now are for sale, including the most recent ones I got. They're beautiful and they're wonderful, but I do not do anything with them. And so for me, it's become almost like pointless for me to spend this amount of money on these dolls for my collection when I'm not really doing anything with them. They don't really get displayed. I don't really take pictures of them. And so they're just kind of, I almost feel like guilty. It almost feels like the dolls are going to waste. Like they would be much more appreciated with someone who actually will be taking a bunch of pictures of them or will actually interact with them at least on a weekly basis. Before I changed the dolls for this particular video and to list them for sale, the last time I had interacted with them was before December. So, it's been several months since I even changed them or looked at them really. And that's how I knew, like, once I sold Kier, which was the doll that I had in my collection for several years, I believe it was 4 years. Once I sold Kier, I kind of knew that the end of my collecting days were coming close. But like I said, I was trying to convince myself if I got new dolls and refreshed my collection, if you will, that I would feel differently. But disappointingly, I just don't. So, yes, I'm still going to be very active in the reborn world because I will almost always continue to paint these dolls and make these dolls, because that part I love. I love painting the dolls. I love seeing them come together. It gives me that artistic outlet. It gives me additional income. So, I love being a reborn artist. And I think I'm just moving to that point in my life where I have to be honest with myself about these dolls and what I find joy in doing with them. And for me, that's no longer at this point in my life collecting. But yeah, since it's been, gosh, total like a decade of my life, if I'm removing the times that I wasn't collecting or anything, or had like temporarily left the reborn world, I think total it's still been like a decade of my life has been at least me being a collector, so it's very difficult. It sounds probably silly to some people watching who don't understand having such a big part of your identity, and having to kind of come to terms with that's no longer part of your identity. It's difficult. So, like I said, this isn't some rash decision of me selling all my dolls and like moving on with my life and being just a reborn artist. It's been over time. It's been building over time. And I just had to set myself and just say, why are you continuing to buy dolls only to sell them a couple months later? Just be honest with yourself and what you're wanting to do here. So, yeah. So all the dolls that I have in my collection that you can see, and I have some dolls that I made as well that you're seeing in this video, they're all available. They're going to all be listed on my Reborns account, which is reborns.com/uni-reborn-dad. So my YouTube channel title, name. And I'll put the link below as well. But that's where all my dolls are going to be. I always sell my dolls on there. So yeah. I hope you guys understand. I don't know what that really means as far as my channel. I think I'm almost like 100% certain I'll continue to make videos here and there, but it just won't be centered around on my particular collection, because there's so much other, the way to think about it as well, which is making me feel better about this decision. There is so much else involved with this wonderful reborn world and how complex it can be and how complex everyone is in it, that I almost feel like I won't run out of things to talk about, even if I'm not actively collecting the dolls anymore, because I'm not leaving the community. I'm just coming from now a perspective more so of an artist. But I do have that perspective as well as someone who used to collect. So it's not like I will be like isolated. It's not like that. And plus, most of my friends that I talk to are absolutely collectors. So, I'll still have them to talk to about issues and what they're noticing in the collecting world of it. But yeah, I hope you guys understand, and don't feel bad if you also are in the same boat as me and you're deciding, maybe these dolls aren't for me anymore. It's okay to let certain hobbies go as you grow into yourself as an adult. So, don't feel bad. Even if you just got a new collection like I did, you have to make those decisions for yourself on what's going to make you the most happy and what's going to make the most sense for you. These dolls aren't going to be forever for a lot of people. And some people, they've been collecting since the beginning. So I'm talking about the beginning of Reborns being like a concept. So some people, it's a lifelong thing. Sometimes you've got to go through seasons. And so, I'm keeping an open mind, and maybe one day, again, I will collect, but for now, I just don't see that happening. That being said, I hope you guys are having a wonderful week, and I will see you guys in the next video, which will likely be the anniversary of my channel, and I always do a giveaway, so if you're listening this long, keep an eye out around March 17th. That's the anniversary of my channel. So just keep an eye out, because I always do a giveaway. So that'll be very, very soon. So see y'all soon. All right, bye.